Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for joining our second session of The Next Normal from Worth Live. I'm Juliet Scott-Croxford, CEO at Worth Media and your moderator for the next hour, and I'm delighted to be joined by founder and CEO of Hintwater, Cara Golden, and private wealth advisor at UBS, Kathy Entwistle. Hi, Cara and Kathy. Cara, are you there?
I am attempting to be there. I'm having some internet connection issues, though, for the moment. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Let's see. I'm not sure why this is.
We can see you too. I can see
you. Can? Oh,
yep.
Okay.
Hi.
Yay. It worked. Yay.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
And I think we're just waiting for Kathy to join as well. So I'm going to do a short intro and then I'll hand over.
Wonderful.
So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our second session of The Next Normal from Worth Live. I'm Juliet Scott-Croxford, CEO at Worth Media and your moderator for the next hour. Delighted to be joined by Cara Golden, CEO and founder of Hintwater, and Kathleen, private wealth advisor at UBS. Many of us have been impacted by this global health pandemic, and many of us are still responding and recovering to the extraordinary and devastating impact that it's had on our personal and professional lives. Our focus at Worth is really to engage and keep our community connected and our partners connected through this time with inspiring and informative content and conversations that are relevant to you and the world that we're now living in. In this series, The Next Normal, Worth is looking ahead to what the world looks like after the current crisis passes, and how specific businesses and sectors are not only responding to the existing challenges, but also what they're doing to transform themselves and prepare for the future. And our second session is focused on CPG, the consumer packaged goods industry, and the future of the food and beverage sector specifically. And we're delighted to have Cara Golden, founder and CEO of Hintwater, and Kathy Entwistle, private wealth advisor at UBS, to offer their perspective on the future of the industry. So a few housekeeping rules just before we get started. This is a conversation. It's super relaxed. We welcome questions from you. Attendees are muted on entry into this session. If for any reason you're not muted, please do make sure you are on mute, as we do experience some feedback issues sometimes when people aren't on mute. However, we welcome questions, and you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to type in a question. Either everyone can see that, or if you type it directly to me, Juliet Scott-Croxford, I can weave it into the dialogue. If you'd prefer to remain anonymous, or also we'll come to you to ask the specific question. So firstly, let's get started with a personal check-in. How are you doing personally, Cara, and how have you been managing your own well-being during these incredibly unusual times?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Marin County, and just outside of San Francisco. And I think like the key thing is, as time has moved on and we've, really been wondering.
Cara, I think we lost you there. Cara, can you still hear us? We'll give her a couple of minutes just to come back on. I think we're obviously experiencing some technical issues. There you are, you're back.
Yeah, did we cut out? Do you want, should I try calling back in, or what do you think?
It's okay. I think keep going. This is the world we now live in, right?
I know, exactly. So it's crazy. So could you hear me okay? It was just the video.
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, just really just trying to, do I was always used to getting up early and getting my workout in, and so that's what I'm doing. We've also found that, especially I've been helping out the sales teams a bit, and so that my sales teams aren't going to as many stores. So I've been trying to get in there to stores as early as possible, just to avoid any, too many people in the stores. And our teams have been really doing the same thing. So I'm still getting up at 5:30 and getting the exercise in right before going and working a bit.
And that's great to hear. I think when we hear Kathy, I'll also do a personal check-in with her as well, because I know she's been going through similar challenges and working from home. Before we get to sort of navigating the current situation, Cara, I want to just take a step back, because you've got an extraordinary story about how you founded Hint. And actually, you and Kathy, who I think has just joined. Kathy, hi.
Hi, everybody. Hey, sorry to be late.
That's
My mother used to say I'd be late to my own funeral, but I really had some technical trouble today. I apologize.
I was just saying to Cara, it's the world we now live in. Kathy, personal check-in. How are you doing, and how are you managing your well-being during this time?
Doing well. I think it took a long time to get to that normal feeling that, okay, we can manage with where we're at. And like Cara, I think we've all had to do our own personal and business pivots. So, in terms of helping our clients, being on the phone, bringing resources to them, just being very proactive. And I think, Cara, you'll probably agree, I think Juliet will too, is we can't wait for things to change for us. It's up to us to make it happen and get it done, because those of us that are able to move forward and sort of seize this opportunity to move forward will be the ones that get through on the other side. And if we're waiting for things to get back to normal before we can start business again, it's not going to happen.
Absolutely.
And Cara and Kathy, I was just saying that you two actually share something in common, in that you were both young mothers and doing a lot of work and working through career pivots from your kitchen. And I wanted Cara and Kathy, both of you, to share your story on your business background. Let's start with you, Cara, in terms of how Hint was born.
Yeah, so I wasn't in the food and beverage industry before. I was actually in tech, having been an executive at America Online, running their e-commerce business. And I decided to venture into the beverage industry when I recognized that what I was actually putting into my body, diet soda in particular, was not as healthy as maybe I had originally thought. And I had developed some health issues that I, really started to see come out in my skin. My terrible adult acne that I didn't even have as a teenager, and also I had gained weight over the course of a bunch of pregnancies, uh, and it was interesting because the diet soda for me, again, like, I thought I was doing okay just by putting, diet soda into my system. And then when I gave it up to drink plain water just as a test, I, really saw the difference that it made in my system. And so the not only did my skin clear up, but also I lost over 50 pounds. I, developed a lot more energy than I had before. And, I was really surprised by it. So I was sort of living this life for a year, and people would ask me, what have you done? I mean, your skin looks great. You lost all this weight. I mean, where did this kind of come from? And as I explained to people how I had just made this little shift, I realized that for so many people, it's really hard to get healthy, right? You set a goal, maybe you follow a diet plan, maybe you see a doctor along the way. But what I had done was just change one thing in my everyday diet, to, drinking water and drinking, I started slicing up fruit and throwing it in water just to get myself to enjoy water. But I thought if I could actually develop a product that gets people to ultimately, enjoy water again, then, they could get their health back a lot easier. And so that was like the original thinking. I didn't even know, early on that it was a company. I really thought of it as a cool product, and ultimately, was sort of a, Uber goal to be able to, get a product on the shelf at Whole Foods. I don't know if anyone else has had that kind of, dream, but for me, I just thought it'd be really, really fun and cool to be able to make that happen. And, that's really how it started. And, today we're the largest independent non-alcoholic beverage in the country that doesn't have a relationship with the big soda companies. I always tell entrepreneurs, especially, that we're a 15-year-old startup. We're still, scrappy enough where the CEO during COVID is going into stores and helping stock shelves and, making it happen. So it's been a fun journey. And I think more than anything, it's exciting to see customers, really every single year. And this time is no different, put health at the forefront of kind of how they're thinking about life.
It's such an extraordinary and incredible story, Cara. Congratulations! It really is amazing. And Kathy, before we hear more on Hint, share with us the work that you do and the work that you do with businesses and families.
Sure. So it's so funny to hear other people's stories, and Cara, you're so inspiring. I also lost quite a bit of weight. We have a lot in common. So it's interesting. When I was home, I was a stay-at-home mom in the beginning because I just couldn't figure out like how to get it all done. So while I was home, I realized there were a lot of women who didn't understand their financial picture, and I started teaching courses. And to me, that was also, I wasn't expecting it to become a business. I just thought, let me just start teaching and helping other people understand their financial picture. And it ended up turning into that moment where so many people kept saying to me, we'd love to work with you. Can we bring our accounts to you? You explain things so much better. And that's how I started working as a financial advisor. And it was a great way to start a career with young children and have flexibility to go to work and also still be present in their lives. And what we really try to do is we're helping the Caras of the world and the C-suite executives and the founders and business owners and women, particularly because women tend to have a harder time with embracing financial issues. But we're trying to bring all the resources to our clients and to anyone who wants to learn more, to help empower them and give them that independence and flexibility to make decisions that are best for them.
Thank you, Kathy. Cara, how has the pandemic shifted even more demand on you as a brand and on other CPG brands, specifically in the food and beverage industry?
I think that the key thing that, we've seen through this is that, I'm very thankful that we have 3 channels of sales. And we had that obviously going into COVID, but and by that I mean, so we sell in stores, we sell in on our website and through Amazon, which we call e-commerce, and we also sell in we call it food service, corporate food service. So we sort of grew up in Google and Facebook and some of the big tech companies, but we're in many, many micro kitchens and businesses throughout the US. So the biggest hit that we had, and I think many other food and beverage companies had as well, with corporations being closed, is that they're obviously not stocking their offices with food and beverage. So, if you if that was your business, right, that's all you did was, service these corporations, then, you're in trouble. I mean, that this has been a major, major hit for you. So we really forecasted early on that we didn't know how long offices were going to be closed for, or even that they were going to be closed nationwide, as they ended up being. But we, wanted to make sure that our direct to consumer business was, really going. And thankfully we had our own direct to consumer business on drinkhint.com that we were able to share with our consumer lists. For those of you who aren't familiar with e-commerce, if you sell your product through Amazon, you're not having the relationship with the customer in the same way where you can access their email and go and reach out to them. So that was a major, thank goodness that we were set up that way. And again, we still serve through service the consumer through Amazon as well. But in addition to that, we've been an essential product, so we're in stores too, and that business has continued to grow. But instead of really having 3 channels of sales, we're down to 2 channels of sales. So, and, I think the fact that we pivoted pretty quickly to be able to, really push the e-commerce and make sure that consumers knew that if they didn't want to go into stores, that we were available through, lots of other services that do service stores, like an Instacart, for example, or they could just go on to our website and order directly through the website to have it shipped to home. So I think that was like a real key from a sales side of it. But then the other side of this is really, the supply chain and the actual manufacturing of the product. And it's interesting because I think at times we've, sort of thought internally, are we, we do everything in the US, first of all of our labels, all of our bottles, all the sourcing of the fruit, everything that we do has been done in the US. And that's really been, the focus, not because we necessarily think that the US is better, but we just felt like it was more reliable in terms of the product that we got. We didn't necessarily think from a, pandemic perspective, it would actually save us or potentially even grow our business. Many of not just consumer products companies in the food and beverage space, but also in beauty or apparel or healthcare are facing the same challenges, where even when the factories opened up in Asia and in Europe, the key challenge was really, they're very backed up, and when are they ultimately going to get to you? And so we never had to deal with any of that because we did everything in the US, and that was, super, super key. And then the other piece of it that I think everyone is hearing a lot about even today is, the food companies that are out there that are manufacturing. When I look at it from a CEO perspective, I think that
You've gone on mute, Cara. She will come back. Kathy, a question for you while Cara comes back on is about the current market. And
so many of these companies are going to need to go in that direction. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Cara. Sorry, you cut out for a short space of time then, but keep going.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you again now.
Perfect. So I don't know where I was cut off, but basically the way that we actually produce our product is in a clean room where there are no people in the actual filling, where the product is filled. So I think so many of the food and beverage companies have a lot of people on the lines where, you know, in the case of a pandemic where you're trying to actually figure out, you know, how do we stop spread of this, it makes a big difference. And when you're a product like ours that is regulated by the FDA, and you do your entire, you know, manufacturing and filling or creating in a clean room where there are no people, it makes your business a lot more reliable and, you know, less likely to, you know, create any type of hiccups. So that's been huge. I think that's going to be, you know, definitely a conversation as people start to go back to work. You know, especially for these manufacturers, how do we automate, and how do we ultimately, you know, create a world where, you know, people don't necessarily need to be on the lines.
And I just want to say welcome to everyone that joined a few minutes after the start. We're here with Cara Golden, founder and CEO of Hint Water, and Kathy Entwistle, senior private wealth advisor at UBS, and we're talking about the future of the food and beverage industry. Please do submit your questions in the chat to me, Juliet Scott-Croxford. Cara, one of the sort of stories I thought was really interesting is that you did pivot very quickly. You know, you talked about these the three channels that you use: retail, online, Amazon. And I thought it was really interesting because it was the week that we were all together, the three of us were together at the Women in Worth Summit, March 5th. And it was, I think, on that flight home back to San Francisco that you went into a store and you saw that some of your stocks were depleted, and that's where you realized actually people were stockpiling and some of the product was struggling to get to the store, right?
Yeah, and it was actually that I think I was in New York twice those 2 weeks. I think I flew back to San Francisco and then I came back because I remember it was March 13th and I was flying back from New York, and one of my kids asked me to stop at Target on the way home from the airport. And of course I can't help myself when I walk into any stores where we, you know, stock Hint. I go into the space where our product is. And I was really surprised to see that we were very low on product, that the shelves had basically been, you know, decimated, and from people, just consumers coming in and buying our product, which is good, but it's not good when you don't have product on the shelf ultimately for people to buy. And so I reached out to our head of sales and I said, listen, I know that, you know, Target and other stores are on auto replenishment, which basically means that the register will actually trigger a buy and get more stock and stock on the shelves. But I said, it just doesn't seem to be working. I mean, we're way too low in stock, and I checked the back room and everything. And so by Saturday morning, I had gone out to some other stores, Whole Foods, Molly Stone's, which is a local specialty store around us as well. And it was the same issue. And so what I realized is while grocers were, relying on their systems, relying on these auto replenishment systems, for one reason or another, they weren't working. And, I don't know about you, but nothing is more annoying to me to hear from somebody like, oh, we've got a problem, but they don't actually tell you how you're going to be a part of the solution. And so I said to our sales team, why don't we just reach out to all the buyers? I mean, is this going on throughout the US, and see if we can just send a truckload of product in on Monday morning, and we'll figure out the accounting of it, later, but let's get their shelves stocked. And, over 50% of our customers, our grocery partners, took us up on it. And we actually gained a lot more space, because I think so many manufacturers were just assuming that this auto replenishment system, like it'll eventually catch up. But the grocers had never really seen, this situation for themselves either. And so, it's not exactly clear what had gone on. And, again, I just really wanted to go in and solve the problem. But I think that the most important thing for us, and again, it's always easier to look back, hindsight 2020 on it. We actually gained space in so many stores because so many manufacturers were, just relying on just their old way of doing business, and we were really quick to just jump in and help.
And it sounds like some of the decisions you've made in terms of production in the US, clean rooms, which actually on the face of it commercially are probably a lot more costly, have actually meant that you are in a sustainable place now to be able to keep serving your customers.
100%. I mean, I think it's like, I don't worry about our manufacturing. That is not the situation that a lot of manufacturers are in today. And so, but I think that, you think about it, that it's when something works in your manufacturing, and like so many other food manufacturers have seen, you just continue to put band-aids on it, right? When things break down, versus actually investing in, the future. And I think we've
Cara there.
I don't think she's back yet. I would love to ask her, Juliet, like she came in from such a position of strength into the time period, and so many came in from a position of weakness, not obviously intentionally. And it would be interesting to hear her perspective about how do you continue from going forward, those people that didn't come in from a position of strength like Cara did, with Cara's back, but how do people pivot now? What would Cara recommend now for people to pivot from a position of weakness to a position of strength?
I agree. And also, Kathy, your perspective from a market point of view as well on what you've seen over the last 2 months and where that's going, and how that is impacting businesses like Cara's or that industry as well.
Sure. Actually, we've been coming in, our clients have come in from a position of strength too, because there's a certain way that we have guided them, and that's to have that liquidity on the sidelines, that 6 to 12 months of liquidity on the sideline, whether it's for your personal well-being or if you're a business owner or a founder, to have that in your business as well. And you never want to be in an emergency situation where you need liquidity. So you always try to have your liquidity ready in advance. So by having liquidity ready, when you come into volatility in the markets or disruptions in the business economy, you're better prepared because you don't have to panic as much that you're not able to get through a short period of time without that cash flow or that liquidity or whatever it may be. You have resources. So for our clients, from the markets perspective, seeing those markets fluctuate so wildly, particularly in March, they were able to get through it because they knew that they still had money available on the sidelines, and that was whether it was a business, their business, or their personal situation.
I agree. And Cara, I think you're back with us. That there are a few questions, but Kathy had a really good point about you came into this pandemic from such a position of strength, and how might brands that haven't afforded that position of strength be experiencing this crisis, and what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, so I mean, just to be clear, I mean the food service side of our business basically went to zero. So everything wasn't, completely perfect, right? I think, we definitely had our challenges, but because we had, different revenue streams coming in, we were able to say the other two revenue streams are fine, and we can actually push on those. So I think that the most important thing to do, and we've seen this now in 2009 during the financial crisis, and I'd seen it in another company in 9/11, is just to look at sort of what happened and how could we be better off if this happens again. And so I think like that's such a critical piece.
I want to go to a couple of the attendees now. There's a question from Carly. Carly, if you're there, we'll flip to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, hi there.
So my question was just how you are making your customers aware of the clean rooms and the way that you manufacture, because I'm sure for many folks that would be very important to purchasing a product. So just how are you reaching out to your customers, letting them know what's going on, and then how are you kind of carefully still promoting the product at this time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, because we have our own direct-to-consumer business, we have a piece you can buy our product on Amazon, but we've also been building for the last 5 years a pretty significant business that prior to COVID was 40% of our overall business. I think by one, it will probably be closer to 55 to 60% of our overall business. It's grown that significantly. But because we had a database of customers, we were able to go back to them and speak to them, through our email marketing. And so, not just from it's going to be okay, we have plenty of stock, and, there's no need to go to the grocery store if you choose not to do that, but also basically, exactly what I mentioned around how we actually ultimately manufacture the product. So, and again, I look at the food industry as a whole, and, I'm not sure. I think that there's a lot of hype that's going on right now. At the end of the day, we cook our chicken, right? It's I'm not sure how much that matters, but it sounds really bad. And I think ultimately you're 100% right. When the customer hears that, they just don't really know, should I be eating meat anymore? Should I like not be doing that? But so I think that there's kind of some perception problems with that. And, for the food industry as a whole right now, and potentially the beverage industry as well. But it's just another reason to kind of look at, could we be better at ultimately manufacturing in a way that there isn't any question.
And Cara, sort of thinking about how the business has shifted over the past 2 months, how much of that do you think is going to continue going forward? So sort of direct to consumer, directly with your consumers versus retail versus something like Amazon, where you've been deemed an essential product, right, through Amazon because it's water.
Yeah, I think more and more people will, that had already started, but I think more and more people will choose to shop from their computer or their phone. And I think that this just made people realize that, do I actually need to be going to a store or not? I mean, I actually really enjoy going to stores, and so I don't think stores will go away anytime soon. But I think that, at least in the Bay Area where I am, there's, you must wear a mask before you go into a store. There's arrows all over the floors, and, there are rules now, and there are lines, and so people may choose that to not do that, right? Or maybe they're going to choose to have Instacart go into those stores for them, or another service. So I think the world is definitely changing, and habits are changing, and I think that, we'll just have to see exactly where this goes. But I think from a corporate food service perspective, I think, definitely it will start back up again, where people will be ordering products to stock their offices, because people will be going into offices. But will it be less people? Probably. Will it be in, sort of staggered in terms of, I don't think everybody's going to come back into the office at the same time, or maybe less people overall. So I think that business for us, we're sort of watching and waiting to see exactly what happens.
I was going to ask you both about that in terms of, obviously, we've all got very used to sort of working from home. I think that there are some positives around it, but also I think that I'm certainly missing that sort of face-to-face connection. And how have you led through this process? Because I know you had to pivot some of your staff in terms of the roles that they were previously focused on, whether it was like in-store, event, and how have you moved your staff around and kept them engaged through this time?
Yeah, so for example, the food service corporate salespeople that we had, we knew that that business was going to be less. And so we quickly moved them over to other roles, primarily sales roles, so that we could actually ask the team that was going into stores to go into less stores and stay as local as possible. We have not laid off or furloughed any employees, and our plan is not to do that. So we also, you mentioned the events team. We have events teams that go out to events and that are full-time employees, and so we quickly, made the decision on that weekend of March 14th, 15th that there were probably going to be less events. It was not ultimately safe for our employees to be going into a store, even if that's what people were doing to sample. We thought it was kind of hard to get people to sample our product in a store 6 feet away from each other. So it just really wasn't safe. So we moved the events team into merchandising roles as well. And yeah, I mean, we were able to, really figure it out pretty quickly. But again, I think that the key was really having these 3 channels of sales potential coming in prior to coming into COVID, where we were able to sort of shift pretty quickly.
That just feels like a continuous. Your story, I feel like, is like you're the queen of pivots in everything. Like, you seem to like respond very quickly to what's put in front of you. And how much of that is gut instinct versus how much of it do you sort of have mentors that you lean on to give you advice?
I have lots of friends that are, some running companies, some previously have run companies, but I do think, some of it is, look, some of it's age and experience and having been through crisis before. And I think it's just a matter of, just recognizing that, this is part of the journey, right? And just going and trying. And I think that we have over 200 employees in the company, and I think everybody realizes when they come into Hint that, this is a company where, we're working hard and thinking. And as we went through this process, we, shared with employees that here's what we want you to do. We don't want to furlough people. We want, are you good with that? And for the most part, everybody was. We had a couple of people who had, elderly people that they lived with that they didn't want to be working in stores, and other people that had chronic illnesses that they couldn't really be around, and we just worked it out. We just figured out what else could they be ultimately doing. So I don't know. I think it's hard to answer that question. I think it's just a matter of, you just don't stop. You just kind of figure out exactly, how can you get through this?
Yeah. Kathy, give us a bit of an outlook on the sort of financial picture from what you're seeing.
To unlock myself, thank you. So it's scary, right? Everybody's very nervous about the economy, and it is going to take time to rebuild. The markets have recovered quite a bit from its initial fall, and I think if you have a long-term view with investing in companies and in markets, you'll be great in the long run. If you have a 2, 3, 5-year horizon, you want to be invested in the markets, and you want to find companies with leaders like Cara, who have knowledge, experience, insights. They're not afraid to be proactive, and they can execute. You know, they can execute on a plan and be nimble if need be. And those are the kind of companies that we're looking for to invest in going forward. And I think those are the companies that are going to succeed and come through this in a good way. So, and the whole e-commerce and you know, consumer discretionary and consumer staples and telecommunications. These are all areas that we think have, you know, a lot of room to grow going forward.
There's a question about diversification, and Cara, you've talked about channel diversification, but if Julie Marcus is there, I'll hand over to Julie Marcus because she has a question on where you're taking the product next. Julie, are you there?
Yes, I am. So thanks so much for letting me ask the question. I was just curious, since Hint came about because of a personal need, and you've had so much strength and growth because of this one item, do you see doing some kind of line or brand extension or additional flavors? And then sort of what has been the biggest learning from your experience being a woman in tech and then going to an independent beverage company? Thanks.
Yeah, good question. So we actually a few years ago launched our first brand extension into sunscreen, and so you know, that actually started again from my own you know, problem that I was trying to solve. I was looking for a sunscreen that didn't have oxybenzone in it, that just went on clear and felt good and also smelled good. And so, you know, went back to my kitchen, started playing around with sunscreen, but I actually almost looked at it as a hobby. I didn't really think of it as a Hint product until all sunscreens actually need to be approved by the FDA. And so I had to turn in paperwork to have it approved. So I sort of put Hint on there as a company sort of to hold it, not really knowing whether or not we would do it. And then finally we were like, yeah, it kind of works. I mean, we're using the fruit to actually scent the product. And now, I mean, it's interesting because when I launched that product, I would say that more people in the beverage industry had an issue with it. Consumers didn't really have an issue with it in terms of like, wait a minute, you're doing beverages and now you're doing sunscreens. People are like, no, she's always been looking to solve a problem. So she's solving a problem there. And we launched our third brand extension into an entirely different category this January with a deodorant. And while that it solved a problem for me around, so I was wearing antiperspirant for years. My father actually had Alzheimer's and passed away 10 years ago. And when I started really looking at a lot of the research around Alzheimer's, and obviously we don't have a cure and we don't know everything about Alzheimer's, but the key thing that I was looking at when I was doing my research on who gets this is, you know, aluminum is just not so great for anybody who has dementia. And I thought, you know, how do I ultimately get aluminum and come in contact with aluminum? Besides, you know, using aluminum on my cookie sheets or something like that, I thought, you know, antiperspirant is something that I'm using every single day. So I want to get rid of that. And I really didn't know whether or not I would be able to be, you know, sort of living that way without antiperspirant. And what I found after a couple of months and, you know, sort of making my own home-based deodorant was that I was able to, you know, get rid of it. So our product is again called Hint. It's a great deodorant. You know, it's a great brand extension. And more than anything, I mean, we can do new flavors of Hint water all day long. We can come out, you know, we've come out with a carbonated version of our product, a caffeinated version of our product. The real core and the promise to consumers is that we don't use sweeteners. So no sugar, no stevia, no, you know, monk fruit or whatever the current, you know, sweetener of the hour is. We don't use that. But in these other brand extensions, I think the consumer sees that we're solving problems for them. And, oftentimes that's their first entry into the brand. So they may try our sunscreen and, love it, and then come back to Hint. Maybe they had Hint a couple of times, Hint water, but now they're coming back to it because they've gained a relationship with the brand. And from a, e-commerce side of this business too, I mean, we're really able to see, and test how we get this consumer to really have that brand loyalty. And, and again, not every consumer is going to buy from all of these categories, but many of them do. And so it's very exciting to, really kind of own the customer in all those different categories.
Kathy?
Sorry, yes, I was just going to mention too, it's interesting. Last week, Cara, we were speaking with Mauricio Imansky and Farah Brittany from the agency. And what you just said struck me very similar to what Mauricio said, which was it's about the experience. You want to make people like feel something special about what you're doing or the product that they're using. And this was a real estate example, but for you, it's about knowing the quality, knowing that you're putting good things into your body or around your body, and that it's coming with a purpose. And I think that is really a sign of an incredibly thoughtful leader and the product that follows.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like the, every day I get emails from consumers, sometimes multiple times a day, thanking me for, help, for having a brand that helps them solve a problem that they were trying to deal with for a long time. And it sounds crazy to people that don't get those emails, but I feel like, we did it. We had a relationship with the, with breast cancer awareness. And, it's really touching when somebody says, I've been going through chemo and I've had a really hard time drinking water, and I found your product and it helped me actually get through chemo. Like, that is the feeling that people are getting off of a beverage or, a consumer product like that. It's really powerful. So,
you did with breast cancer awareness, Cara, because didn't you change the color of the bottle as well?
Yeah, well, we did a special label and we did a pack, but we also, went in and we ended up giving back over, $500,000 to breast cancer awareness. So, it was a pretty significant, donation to them. But I think more than anything, there were many people that were not Hint consumers prior to ultimately, tasting the product, and they were hearing about it from other people who were breast cancer survivors or people that were going through chemo. And, we just view it as it made sense. I have, unfortunately, a lot of friends who have been through breast cancer, and, they've told me over the years that when you get a metallic taste when you're going through chemo, and that drinking water actually enhances that metallic taste. If you drink anything with lots of sugar or sweeteners in it, you actually get nauseous. And so I've been told this over and over again, how Hint has really helped them to get through chemo. And that was kind of the big aha moment that I thought maybe we really should do something with breast cancer and help a lot of other people. So that is really what we lead with when we're developing products and going into new categories. We're not doing, Me Too products. We didn't do a natural deodorant because we thought, oh, natural deodorants are the hot new thing. We really developed a deodorant that helps solve a problem, not just around getting rid of aluminum, but also most of the natural deodorants out there have a coconut base to them. So coconut is actually, I happen to be allergic to coconut, but coconut is a class 1 allergen. And so people who really know Hint recognize that we don't use any class 1 allergens in any of our products, which coconut is one ingredient, peanuts are another ingredient. So in everything we do, we're not using any class 1 allergens. So again, I love the concept of natural deodorants, but if you've got class 1 allergens in it, it's going to, be an issue for many people. And we wanted to solve that problem for people.
I think what strikes me is as Kathy said, in both your leadership and in what you've developed through him, is that it really is about not just the bottom line, but social impact. And you really are leading with a core purpose. And I think there's something interesting in the way that you're thinking about solving problems for your consumers, for your customers. And in that way, you really are connecting with them through a relationship. It's not just a transactional thing where you're selling them water, but you really are trying to create a relationship with them, which I think, do you think that is the future for brands in your space? And how do you think that's one of the major shifts that other brands are going to need to follow to be able to survive post-pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're the only, certainly not the only startup that has gone out and tried to solve problems. But I think that during a, fluctuating economy too, if you're actually solving problems for people, then you're going to be okay. Right. I think like that is the number one thing when people are going to purchase something or use something. They are doing it no matter what the economy is to actually solve a problem. Those are the products that they're going to continue to ultimately, purchase or use. Right. And so I think that the idea in great economies, then it's just about just create products and buy the right ads, and then people have a lot of discretionary income, and so that they're going to go do it. But I mean, it's just kind of common sense. It's like, solve problems for your consumers, make them recognize why you're doing this, and I think then you get the stickiness of that consumer, and also just makes you feel good as a leader. Like, I mean, I live for those emails from consumers. Like I never, prior to starting Hint, I never used to get emails saying like, you have like changed my life. And people can't, like, if you've never gotten those emails from consumers, like it's really powerful. And it really is, it creates purpose, it creates energy for you, as a founder. It's a powerful thing.
I couldn't agree more. And Kathy and Cara, before we draw this conversation to a close, I want to ask you both, Cara first, what are you hopeful for in the future?
So I think one of the key trends that I've seen people really focusing on is throughout this, last couple of months, is health. And I've been really hopeful that more and more consumers put health and their own health and their family's health at sort of the forefront of, what they do every day. Because I think that, mental health and lots of other types of health are really, they stem often from what you're ultimately doing, whether, you're exercising or eating right and all of those things. But I don't think people have been that serious about it. I feel like through the last 60 days, people have really gotten to a point of being pretty serious about, paying attention to what they're actually feeding themselves. And I think it stemmed from, people either, getting sick with Corona or not wanting to get sick, right? And so I'm hopeful that stays, that people aren't just like randomly going and just doing whatever they want and just being foolish with, their core. Because I think it's just it's something that we all need to really pay attention to.
Thank you. And Kathy?
I would agree with that. I think that we've had a 60-day pause, and it's interesting. We're going back to the basics, and the basics of family and friendships and simplicity are all very meaningful to everybody right now. I'm a big, mental health person. I think it's important to reduce stress and be healthy. And one of the ways to reduce stress, of course, is to embrace your financial picture, to learn a little bit about it. And once you learn about your own financial situation, you're going to reduce your stress too. But I'm most hopeful for the fact that we have people like Cara out there who are creating like really great companies and opportunities for people to have better products and also to provide, their livelihoods for all the people that are working there too. So Cara, pretty amazing. You're very inspiring.
Oh, thank you. You too.
You really are. Cara and Kathy, thank you so much. I think you're both amazing, and it's been an insightful and such an engaging conversation. And thank you again to our sponsoring partner UBS as well. Most importantly, thanks to all of you that joined us today and for your great questions. We hope you found it useful. Thanks for hanging in there whilst we had some technical challenges. Please do share any feedback with us. We'd love to hear your comments and any other topics you'd like us to cover in the future. You can email us at community@worth.com. In next week's Next Normal series, we're joined by Vanessa Barboni Hallik, CEO of sustainable fashion brand Another Tomorrow, and Kathy Entwistle from UBS to discuss the future of the fashion industry and particularly sustainable fashion. Please register online at worth.com/events. We've just shared the link with you in the chat as well as sign up for our weekly newsletter. In the meantime, stay well, stay healthy, and enjoy the rest of your day with your family. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.